What's up? We're live though. What's up? Oh shit. Okay, well, Danny just popped off, but what's up, horror fans? This is Pete here from the Lasser Cast. I bet you $50 that Danny just got a phone call. Let's get him back on here. But today we are talking about Ghostbusters Afterlife. No, we are not fucking talking about Ghostbusters Afterlife. See, this is what happens when Danny just drops off immediately. Um, we are talking about Ghostbusters Frozen Empire, which just came out this last weekend. Danny will be right back. I'm sure he's going to be rocking some different popcorn buckets. But I also have a feeling that he and I are, what do you call it? Not going to be eye to eye on this movie. So while we're waiting for Danny, let's just go into some of the details about this movie, right? This movie was not directed by Jason Reitman, which I thought was going to be the case again. It was actually directed by Gil Cannon or Kanan, whatever. Okay, so this guy, it's kind of interesting. He directed the Poltergeist remake, which I didn't see. He also directed City of Ember, which was kind of when there were all these young adult movies that were popping up that were like the Hunger Games, kind of the trend that was started with Harry Potter, went from Harry Potter to the Hunger Games, and you had like Divergent. And so City of Ember was going to be another one of those franchises, and I don't think it was a hit at all. But that movie actually had Bill Murray in it too. So Gil Kennan has worked with Bill Murray before. So besides that, I did a little research into him. And for Gil Kennan, he directed Monster House in 2006, which was like this computer animated movie. It's like one of those first big computer animated movies. And I can't remember who was the writer on that movie, but I think it was like somebody who has written like horror movies or genre movies. And that movie was a big hit as far as I know, and a lot of people like that movie a lot. He also directed I already said the Poltergeist remake. Now when you look at his influences, he said David Lynch, then this guy Richard Elfman, who I've never heard of. I've heard of Danny Elfman, but this is a different dude, and he is a director. He's made things in like the 70s and on. Then there's Lot Reiniger is another influence on this Gil Kennan guy, and then Alfred Hitchcock. So you get David Lynch and Alfred Hitchcock being the inspirations for this dude. You'd think that he'd make like this real interesting movie, but I don't know. I don't know if it's like Sony and their influence. Oh, here we go. Okay, there's Danny's face. Hello, how's it going, man?
Yeah, I don't know what, like, you saw me pop up, and then right as we were about to start recording, it suddenly said I'm unsupported on the browser, and I had to download the StreamYard app and hop on that way.
Jesus, that sounds annoying. I'm sorry.
Yeah. All right. Well, it works, so I'm here.
So, Danny, I actually kept going while you were off. I was just telling everybody about the director of this movie, Gil Kennan. Now, did you know anything about him?
I know that he co-wrote Afterlife, but that's it. That's all I know about him.
Yeah, I mean, he was kind of interesting. I'm going to just repeat it real quick just for your sake because I want to get your 2 cents. But he directed that movie, Monster House. Do you remember that movie from 2006?
Yeah, I when did that come out? 2006?
Long time ago, yes.
Jesus Christ. I was going to say, I think I remember taking Brandon, but he would have even been too young. No, I definitely saw it. That's the one where they're like, look, it's the house's uvula. And the kid goes, it's a girl house?
Wow.
I have some, a few memories of that. That was like a fairly cute, like animated, like family style horror film.
Right. So, I mean, that's an interesting movie, though, and I think it was kind of a hit. He also did City of Ember, which is another one of those like young adult movies that was kind of in the trend of like the Hunger Games and Twilight, but it was like a sci-fi one, and Bill Murray was in that one too.
Oh, that just that was a genre that I was into for a few seconds. Um, I saw, I actually read the Hunger Games books, and I didn't like the third one.
Oh
And
yeah,
I saw they did that thing where they turned part three into two movies, and I saw the first part of it, and I was like, yeah, okay, I'm done. And I
yeah,
never even saw the second part of it.
right.
Uh, yeah, and then there was like the Divergent movies. I never saw those. Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, he's made some movies, and then of course, I want to get your 2 cents on this. He made the Poltergeist remake too. What are your thoughts on that movie?
I think I didn't see it. And
Oh shit.
yeah, and I had no, Poltergeist is, Poltergeist is a perfect movie, the original. And I just never, like, Poltergeist, the remake. When did that come out? 15, like 20.
That's right. Whoa, you nailed that, man. Yeah.
So over the last few years, one of the nice things about our children growing up is that it gives you as an adult a lot more freedom.
Yeah.
Because, you know, they don't need us. Like when I go to the movies now, I don't have to worry about, Charlotte's 13's going to high school next year. Like, so I could be like, hey, Athena's sleeping. Are you okay? I'm going to go out to a late movie by myself. She's like, yeah, no, go
Yeah.
ahead. Like,
Knock
whatever,
yourself
Dad.
out. Yeah.
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 Back in 2015, she would have been like 4.5.
Oh,
So
okay.
I was probably needed at home more. So these last few years, I've been able to like go to the movies at like an insane rate.
Oh, you don't
And
say.
yeah, I yesterday you'll appreciate this. Yesterday I went to the movies twice at two separate movie theaters.
Whoa.
Yeah, and I've been to the movies 4 times in the last 3 days now.
Oh my God.
But yeah, I didn't get a chance to see Poltergeist the remake in the theater, and then by the time it was available, uh, it had gotten such bad reviews that I was just like, all right, well, I'm not going to waste my time. Like I've
Right.
been through this with other movies that I love that have been remade into god awful like cash grab remakes. So I don't want to shit on the movie that I haven't seen, but I've heard exactly zero positive things about it.
Right. Right. Yeah. It's funny because I think that a major thing for you is that you have that like membership where you can go see movies.
Yeah.
What AMC, right? You have that
No,
pass.
I have the Regal Unlimited, and
Oh,
there is a Regal 5 minutes from my house. So I'm one of those people who, if it's 8 o'clock at night and my wife is getting ready for bed and the kids are good, I'll just pull up the app, see what's playing, and be like, well, if I had to pay 17.50 for this, absolutely not. But hey, why not for the 50 cent, fee, processing fee? I'll go.
right.
So yeah, I've seen. Um, and just to pimp out our the stuff on our channel,
Sure.
I've seen Late Night with the Devil and Immaculate over the last couple of days.
Nice.
Posted spoiler free reviews of those on the channel. Both of those movies were friggin' great, and
Nice.
I can, let's just say, if they're not in my top 10 list this year, then we have had a fucking phenomenal year of horror. Which is something that I also think we might be in store for, because I have seen just a slew of awesome horror movie trailers these last few days,
Yeah.
and I am like stoked. I think I tweeted to somebody like, horror fans are eating good in 2024, uh, because we have some like really big time like festival hits from last year that are coming out in theaters this year. Plus, we've got like the stuff like the Beetlejuice trailer that just came out, which looks, just that little teaser looks friggin' great. And I'm like super excited for that
Yeah.
later this year. So
Well, see,
I,
that's a good segue right there. The Beetlejuice trailer, right? Because this one guy on Twitter, I think his name's Joe Russo. I think he's a filmmaker. He had this brilliant fucking tweet that I wish I had captured. He said, "Force Awakens." He said, "There's always an old cloth." Okay, the Force Awakens. They pull an old cloth off of the Millennium Falcon. Ghostbusters Afterlife, they pull old cloth off of Ecto 1. And then in the Beetlejuice trailer, they pull old cloth off of the model from Beetlejuice. And, you know, there obviously is a formula to these movies, these legacy sequels. And with Ghostbusters Frozen Empire, you have this rare occasion where they start to make sequels of the legacy sequels, right? And we've seen that with Star Wars, where they made a whole trilogy. I don't think there's a lot of examples of these like legacy sequels where they have follow-ups. And what they do with the Star Wars trilogy and with this is they start to flesh out or continue the story of like the new characters versus focusing on the old characters.
Yeah.
And I think that that's where, so we're going to start to disagree now and argue. So this might not be as pleasant. Go ahead.
I posted this on Facebook last night, and I said that I want to make it very clear that I enjoyed the time I spent in the theater with Ghostbusters Frozen Empire.
Okay.
I was never bored. I chuckled a bunch of times. I smiled a lot. And when the movie ended, I went, that was good. That was good. Nothing mind blowing, you know, it's not going to change the world, but you know, I had a good time with this. And then when I came home and I was going to like just put like some pros and cons, I realized that when I'm going to talk about it, and if I were to like write about it, I would probably have more negative things to say that would make it feel like this is a negative review. So from my point of view, I know that I definitely liked it more than you did. But from my point of view, I want to make it very clear. I had a very good time with this movie, to the point where Charlotte was out with Athena last night. I said to Charlotte, I said, I liked it. If you want to go see it, because she loves McKenna Grace. We just met McKenna Grace at Monster Mania in Cherry Hill.
Nice.
So I was like, if you want to go see this, I have no problem sitting through it again. I liked it to that level. But when I talk about it, I'm going to like, it's going to sound like I'm nitpicking a lot of it. And you just made a point about characters. I wrote down the characters. There are more characters in this movie than I feel like there are in The Lord of the Rings, than there are in the Star Wars movies. There are more Ghostbusters than there are Avengers at this point. So here we go. Just very quickly. You have the members of the family, which is Gary and Callie, and Callie's two kids, Trevor and Phoebe. Okay. Then you have the legacy characters. There's actually more legacy characters than there are members of the family. There's Ray Stantz, Peter Venkman, and Winston Zedmore, the original Ghostbusters. Janine is back, Annie Potts, and the mayor is now Peck, played by William Atherton. So that's 5 legacy characters. Then we have the characters who we met in the last movie, Lucky and Podcast. They're back. But wait, there's more. We then get Nadim, played by Camille Nanjiani, right? Is that his name? That's his name, right?
Camille Nanjiani,
yeah. You have Dr. Wartsky, played by,
Patton Oswalt?
Yes, Patton Oswalt. Thank you. You have a new helper named Lars, who I genuinely thought was in this movie to be the character that gets like killed off immediately.
Possessed. Oh yeah,
And then you have this other character, Melody, played by Emily Allen Lind, who is the older sister of Olivia Allen Lind. So for anybody who follows Charlotte and my Chucky reviews, we love the character of Lexi, played by Olivia Allen Lind. Her older sister is the one who plays Melody. She was in she was Snakebite Andy in Dr. Sleep.
Yes. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. She was giving me vibes of Juliette Lewis's younger counterpart in Yellow Jackets. What's that character's name again? The blonde?
I know. Oh my God. Natalie?
Nat, right. Thank you. She was giving me vibes of like that actress too.
So those characters that I just listed, that is 15 characters that are all like important to the plot. Like it's not like there's like 4 or 5 main characters and then there's a bunch of actors that show up. These are
Right.
all like important characters that we're supposed to. So that's one thing. This movie is way too crowded.
Yeah.
And
Yes. Hello.
because it's like family friendly Ghostbusters, it's not like Aliens where there's a shit ton of characters, but there's going to be a barrage of death where we're going to
Yes.
lose half of them and then the other survivors have to like pull together and fight back. These are
Yes.
all characters that are going to be there almost, basically from beginning to end, and it's a lot. It felt almost overwhelming at one point.
Yeah, well, let's talk about that. It's funny. I make all these notes, all these tickers, and then you just kind of jump around. Now you're busting out a trap. I was gonna say that I actually felt like maybe people were supposed to die in an original draft of this movie, because I want to talk about one thing. Let's talk about character deaths. You bring up this really interesting point. In the trailer, there's a couple of things they show in the trailer that are not in this movie. At one point, Lucky gets frozen in this movie and she gets frozen in the trailer, but it's much more severe in the trailer where you see like her eyes start to freeze over. And I kind of took it like if a character's eye started to freeze, then they're like dead. And I was wondering if like this was supposed to be a little bit more intense than any other Ghostbusters movie. And maybe they changed it.
I'll take it. Same thing with the trailer. Correct me if I'm wrong. In the movie, they don't show the cyclone starting to freeze up, right? They show the kids on the cyclone, but they don't, because like I thought, and another one of my things that I wrote down was like, it takes a very long time in this movie to get to the villain.
Oh, yes.
And then once we meet the villain, we're like, whoa, that's a pretty cool villain. And he's gone. He's defeated.
Yes,
okay.
yes.
And they don't show New York in peril for any amount of time. I thought they were going to do like a cool panning shot through the streets with like, okay, you don't want to kill any of those 15 characters. Show a bunch of like frozen to death New Yorkers, like cab drivers and like people running and like they did in that one scene back in 1904. They could have done that, and they could have like really showed the like what's happening to the city, and I don't think they did that enough. Again, I think it comes back to like the PG-13 family friendly. I don't even know if this was PG-13. It was probably PG-13, I would assume.
Yeah, but no, I mean, this is something I thought about a lot. Now, here's the thing, right? I want to say two things. First off, I didn't really like this movie. I respect the filmmakers that made it, and I love Ghostbusters. I'm a big Ghostbusters fan, but this movie just kind of felt like hollow to me. I made a thumbnail for this. I wrote 90 characters and 0 jokes land. That's what I wrote. But that's a lie. There is one joke that I did legitimately laugh at. Otherwise, the dialogue, man, like them just driving in the car in the beginning of the movie, like talking to each other as they're trying to trap this ghost. The dialogue was just like, this is so fucking lame. And you have Paul Rudd, which I feel like they're trying to make the main guy of this movie, at least in their advertising. Like if you look right behind us, he's the center of the poster. He's the center of a lot of the posters. And I just feel like there's no main character. It's just like there's the girl. She kind of comes the closest to the main character, but otherwise there's just this big ensemble cast. Yeah, and like Paul Rudd isn't funny in this movie. He's like lame as shit.
Like I said, I did smile a lot. I think I smiled more than I laughed. I had a few moments where I audibly went like, okay. But I will say, so I was going to go see it at 5:00, and the 5:00 show, I don't want to say it had a big crowd, but it was like fairly, like the upper level of the theater was fairly like packed. And I was like, you know what? Maybe I'll wait and see the 6:10 show. And now the 6:10 show was the one, I don't know if your theaters do this, where they have like one show a day where it's like for, with the captions.
Oh no. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So I saw that show. So there were less people in my theater, but I was the only person chuckling. Um, but again, I liked the scene that you're talking about, the opening scene of the movie. What
Yeah.
bothered me about that was it's broad daylight in Manhattan, and they are driving through streets that do not have nearly enough traffic. And I was like, and I know that neighborhood. They're driving through where he crashes is right in front of the Brooklyn Bridge,
Yeah.
and you can't drive there. It's impossible. So the fact that like there's no cars on the road, I'm like, as a New Yorker, this scene like almost offends me in how like easy
Inaccurate.
they make it seem. Like, oh, you could just drive around Midtown Manhattan or Lower Manhattan. It's
Yeah.
nice and easy.
You
No,
can
it's
just
not.
swerve in between the cars. You can open up a little side door and have a side chair coming out. There's enough length there so you can fit
Yeah,
that. Yeah.
like there's things about Afterlife that
Yeah.
they that carried over to, like, I like the Ecto One seat that Phoebe sits in. I like that like element. I like that they have new technology with the traps. They have like the trap on the ground, and then they
The
have
drones.
the drone trap, uh, as opposed to my trap, which only
Oh, there
holds
we go.
popcorn. Yes,
See, I should have put a note in there that Danny was going to have some kind of popcorn box, some special box. That's like your new thing. Oh my God.
it is.
Okay.
I posted. I texted Athena last night. I said I guess my midlife crisis is novelty popcorn buckets, and she went, "Yay!" Dot dot dot. And I said, "Well, it could have been like sports cars and other women. So I guess this is fairly good, right? Like
Yes.
it's not that."
Yes. Well, you work in education like me. I think getting novelty popcorn cups is more reasonable, right?
Yeah.
Than sports cars. Yeah, but it's funny because I got this thing going across the bottom right here, Robert Frost quote. Because even before they get to that sequence where they're driving around Manhattan, there's a Robert Frost quote at the beginning. And I was watching this with my friend Jay, and I immediately turned to Jay and I said, "Oh man, this is going to be so much deeper than all the rest of them." And it's just like I don't know. The movie, it feels like there's like so many different things going on at once, but it's like missing that like interesting core. I was watching a Red Letter Media review of it. They were doing it. They were covering it on their channel, and Mike made such a great point. He said it's like a cake where it has all the right ingredients in it, but for whatever reason, it just isn't like finished and it doesn't feel good. And when you watch the trailer is very tight. Kind of going back to our conversation before about like, is there going to be like deaths and was it going to be more intense? In the trailer, when they're talking about people getting frozen to death out of fear, they show scenes from that 1904 sequence. So you think that that's going to be in the modern day. I mean, you do see a guy with like an eye patch, and you're like, oh, that's weird. But like, there's frozen people in the trailer. So you think that in modern day, there's going to be frozen people. And some people get kind of cold, but then otherwise you don't see any kind of humans getting hurt. Now, I don't think, correct me if I'm wrong, I don't think any people die in any Ghostbusters movie besides the 2016 one.
I I don't even know if I saw that one.
You didn't see the 2016 Ghostbusters?
That's the
The women one, yes.
no, I
The
don't think I
controversial.
did. I don't think I saw the whole movie.
Oh, okay.
Again, same thing as Poltergeist. That was a time where, you know, the Danny that can go see 3 to 5 movies a week in the movie theater is a
Yeah,
relatively new last couple of years thing.
yeah,
Danny with like a young like kindergarten to first grader at home had to like be home to make sure that like Charlotte went to bed, and if she
yeah,
couldn't fall asleep, and Brandon was in like, junior high and high school, and now I have a college aged kid and a kid who is getting ready for high school and has a lot more important things to do than like care that I'm going to the movies. So yeah, it was one of those cases where like if I didn't get a chance to see it in theaters, I probably didn't see it.
yeah.
Uh, because like also by 2015, 2016, like DVDs and like Blu-rays they were already kind of starting, I feel like, to I just didn't like shop for them anymore. Like I didn't have
Yeah.
time to watch stuff at home.
Yeah.
So streaming wasn't like, it hadn't taken over the world as much. So I want to make it very clear. I have not seen that because of any, like, oh, they're women. No,
Yeah.
it's just a blind spot in terms of like, didn't see it in the theater and I never got a chance to see it at home. And I I felt like it got to a point where the discussion around it was so polarizing that I
Yeah.
was like, I don't stand to gain anything from like watching the movie and talking about it, because it's like, if I like it, people are gonna like accuse me of being like a woke liberal, and if I hate it, I'm gonna be accused of being like an asshole. So I
Yeah.
was like, so I'm just not gonna take the 2 hours to watch that movie. Now,
Yeah.
now that we've had these other two Ghostbusters movies, I'll probably go back and check it out though.
Good, good. One of the things I was going to do at the very end was I was going to have us rank all the Ghostbusters movies, because I got inspired by, I think it was Screen Culture or something, some website, but basically they ranked the 5 Ghostbusters movies. They put Frozen Empire as the 5th, as the worst. Then they did Afterlife. Then they did Ghostbusters 2. Then the 2016 Ghostbusters, and then finally the original Ghostbusters. And when I see a ranking like that, I get a little bit upset, because I feel like either they're trying to get backlash, like they want people to get upset and say, oh, you're going to put fucking Ghostbusters 2016 before Ghostbusters 2, or they feel like they have some kind of inspired take. A lot of people rag on Ghostbusters 2. I see why, because it kind of feels like a retread of the first one. But Ghostbusters 2 at least does something that not a lot of modern day sequels do. It sort of like adds to the lore. It adds like the slime stuff. It adds Vigo. There's this idea of like New York with
I'm
the negative energy. Go ahead.
I don't mind when a sequel, like, to me, like, I don't know. I feel like sequels can just do what the original did, but make it, a little bit bigger and a little bit grander. And I think that that's what Ghostbusters 2 did. Yes, they're still in New York and they're still fighting this ancient demonic, evil, Vigo,
Right.
but it adds like a lot of cool stuff. It, like, the slime, and then the idea that there's good slime, the Statue of Liberty ending, like, that is such a great, memorable scene. I'm such a Ghostbusters 2 defender.
Yeah.
I'm going to say something. Maybe you think this is crazy because I know you love this other franchise. To me, Ghostbusters feels a lot like Alien, in a way where, give me the first two, and if none of the others ever existed, I'd be perfectly fine.
Dude,
Because
I said that in our chat. I said that about
oh, did
Alien.
you?
I said that if you take Alien and Aliens and then you don't show anything else,
We
I'm
have
totally
like
fine with
4
that.
group chats on.
That's true. That's true. No,
On,
I said that about
on,
Alien. I feel that way about Alien. You could just
yeah,
watch the first 2 and then you're
I
good.
feel that way about this. This might be controversial because I know Die Hard with a Vengeance has like a massive fan base, but also give me the first 2 Die Hard movies. I really like Die Hard with a Vengeance.
Yeah.
But if only 2 Die Hard movies existed, and Die Hard 2 gets shit on all the time, and I don't understand why. And it's the exact same argument. Well,
Yeah.
it's just John McClane fighting terrorists again. Who cares about that? Yeah, but it's fucking awesome. And it's at an airport, and he like the ending with like the trail of gasoline like lit up on fire, following the plane up into the air. I think it's so fucking cool, and I think it gets shit on for no reason, because everybody loves Samuel L. Jackson, justifiably so, and everybody likes the fact that they brought it back, that they finally put him in New York in part 3. But like, Ghostbusters, Alien, Die Hard, they're franchises that when a new one comes out, I'm gonna watch them, but I think it's like, the big criticism about Ghostbusters Afterlife was they went way too heavily into the nostalgia, especially
No
in the
kidding.
last act.
Yes.
And
Yes.
And I thought this movie took it back. I thought they took it back a little bit, but then they threw in like nostalgia nuggets, like Ray seeing the ghost in the library.
Oh God! Are you gonna tell me you like that?
I would have been okay if he walked by, saw the ghost, and she goes, and he just kind of looks and goes, and moved on. But then he looks back and she chases him, and I'm like, God, you didn't have to do that. Like it's
Yeah, but
too
see,
obvious.
like, I see. Okay. What you described would have been enjoyable if, like, they're like investigating something in the library and that happens. Good if they do it that way. Perfect. But it's in an action sequence where this thing called Possessor, not the Brandon Cronenberg movie, this ghost called Possessor steals like this, like it like pops out of the institute and it's like jumping around. It's in this bag. That's like one of the few creative things in this movie. They have to chase after it to stop it because it has the MacGuffin that's going to release this bad guy. And it's like the action stops dead because Ray has to go, oh, what's that? And then the fucking ghost jumps out at him. Like, it literally stops the action that just started. And you're like, what the fuck? Like, I felt like that was a really lame choice. I mean, with this movie, I love Ghostbusters. Did you watch the cartoon?
Yes, Real Ghostbusters was awesome. And
Yeah.
And there are parts of this movie where the villain, who we've barely talked about because he's barely in the movie, Garada, reminded me of a Real Ghostbusters animated villain.
Right.
One of my favorite episodes was this where they had Sam Hain, the Halloween ghost, which was like this giant flaming pumpkin.
Right.
And I was like, man, they could have done something like that and set Ghostbusters at Halloween. And that would have been awesome. And if they want to do that for the sequel, which we know they're probably going to make, that would be my choice. But I thought that the villain in this movie looked super cool. I liked that it was like an original villain and not like what I see Ghostbusters Afterlife kind of was like, hey, remember that villain you liked remember the Ghost Dogs that you liked? Like, remember these guys?
Right.
Like, we're going to bring that shit back. And it was just too much of the nostalgia. I felt like the first 2/3 of Afterlife were really good. And then the last act, I was just like, oh my God, it's like enough. Yeah. Like, do something else.
Yeah.
And this movie felt at least a little bit more original.
Agreed.
I just wish we would have gotten more of the villain.
Right. And it's so ironic because a lot of the reviews that I've listened to or read, it's like everyone kind of keeps hitting the same beats. They keep saying that like this movie felt like an episode of the animated series, The Real Ghostbusters, but live action. People were saying that like Afterlife really kind of builds up and takes its time, but then when you get to that third act, it's this crazy nostalgia bomb, and everyone's like mad about the traps that are in the cornfield and stuff like that at the end of Afterlife. And I think that like these are accurate descriptions for this movie. To me, I was watching it with my friend Jay, and I didn't really find anything interesting or endearing except for this one part. I want to get your opinion on it. But basically, we have this lesbian ghost romance, right? With Phoebe and then this girl, Melody. So I feel like that was actually interesting, and I was all down, even though like I knew right from the beginning where she's like, I have this one match. This is part of my destiny. What's going to happen? It's like, okay, I think I know what's going to fucking happen with you. I thought that was like an interesting, like new take. We haven't seen that in any Ghostbusters movies. What'd you think of that part?
Well, I mean, the ghost does give Ray a blowjob in the first movie.
That is true. There's some romance there. Yes. In that montage.
I really liked the Melody and Phoebe stuff. McKenna Grace is great. I think that the movie, like to your point, you said earlier that like there is no real main character, and I feel like in the very first Ghostbusters, they do a good job of establishing that the three of them are almost equal main characters, except obviously Venkman becomes the default because A, it's Bill Murray. Right. B, he's the one that initiates the romance with Dana, Sigourney
Yeah.
Weaver. So you're following him on screen more. So like he's your main character, but it's the three of them. They're the ones that start the Ghostbusters. And and it's the same way in part two. Yeah, you have your little core. Winston comes in. You have Janine and Lewis. God, I wish we could have gotten even a cameo. I know, like they need to make a movie about Rick Moranis because I feel like his life is like he was such like an integral part of what made the first two Ghostbusters great.
Yeah. Yeah.
Uh, and obviously, his story is, fairly tragic with him quitting acting to take care of his kids and everything. But um, to get back to your point, like I think that they've done a good job of making it so that McKenna Grace, I think, is the main character here. Phoebe is the main
Yeah. Yeah.
character here. And
Yeah.
very similar to what I just said with Ghostbusters. She's the character who she drives the plot points. She is the one who creates the havoc that, sets the plot in motion. And then she's the one who has those extra interactions like alone off screen with none of those other 14 other characters. Like she shows up at the park by herself and then she meets a ghost.
Right.
And I liked I love their interactions together. I like that they didn't overtly make them a lesbian couple, like, or a lesbian romance. I think that like at the beginning, I think it's very clear that there's a part of Phoebe, and she brings this up to Ray about like, we're like shooting these ghosts with, our proton packs, and we're locking them away in containment forever. Have you ever thought about what it must be like to be a ghost? And Ray says every day. And I know I saw one of your things was like characters phoning it in. I thought Dan Aykroyd was great in this movie. I thought he was one of my favorite parts of the movie.
Yeah. Yeah.
Uh,
Well,
but I really like the McKenna Grace, Emily Allen Lind thing.
yeah.
And I
Yeah.
think that it does kind of become more overt that there is like a connection between them, similar ages, both obviously feeling alone, trying to deal with the world around them. I do like, I liked that aspect of it. Uh,
Yeah. No, I mean, there's a whole part of this movie that I said that this was the main interesting thing for me was this like lesbian ghost subplot, right? And I keep using the word lesbian because there's no like kissing or any kind of like romance visible on screen. It's just all implied. It's all under the surface, and I feel like that's not a creative choice that they made because they're worried about the story. I think that it's just more like they don't want to be too overt with it because then all of a sudden, like they said on Red Letter Media, you're going to get all these videos saying Ghostbusters is woke, go broke. Like, oh, there's lesbians, and they didn't really like officially go there. So you can't get all those fucking hate videos that are going to come out of it. But I was perfectly fine with it. I felt like the resolution was so obvious. I was like, okay, well, this is what's going to happen with this girl. She's going to kind of ascend later on. But there's like dialogue that Phoebe has with some of the people in the lab and with Melody where they're basically talking about ghosts like it's straight up science. And that's one of the best things about the premise of Ghostbusters. It's like you always think of ghosts, the occult, it's magic, but they just break it down to like basic science and they're like exterminators. That's great. That's the
yeah.
heart of Ghostbusters.
Yeah,
In this,
that's what Ray and Egon were in the original, and like I chuckled at the callback joke to like where Ray says to Peter, "You know what this means?" And Peter just goes, "Can you just tell me what it means? Can you pretend that I know?"
yeah,
Because
yeah,
like that was Egon, that was Harold Ramis. Like they were always the two nerdy science guys, and
right.
Peter was always just like the, "Hey, what are we doing?"
Right, right. Yeah, I think he's like just do it. We believe in you or something like that. He says at the end there. But what I was gonna say is like they talk about the soul as if it's like made out of energy. And then there's the idea that when you die, if you've if you're not like emotionally attached to something, if you've like done what you're supposed to do, then your energy becomes one with the universe. And I actually really like that idea. And it's just sort of referenced in the background here. It's not like a major part of the story. But I really like that whole aspect. And there is this one scene that I wasn't really expecting where Phoebe goes into this device that's supposed to extract ghosts from items that are possessed. And then she literally has like her soul, her body, so she can go be with Melody. And like, I wasn't expecting that sequence at all. But the movie kind of telegraphs it to where Melody's going to betray Phoebe. And I mean, they make it obvious too when the Garaka like talks to her. But I actually really like that sequence when he does betray her, because he like controls her when she's a ghost and her eyes are all blue and she's like controlled. And then she's like muttering this incantation that's going to open up his little prison. Like, I liked that aspect too.
Yeah.
But it's just this one part of a very bloated movie that's like based on a comedy. And I just didn't think it was like funny at all, you know?
I like I said, I giggled, I chuckled a few times.
Yeah.
I again, like, we're 40 minutes in. I feel like we've been overly negative, pointing out all the flaws. And it doesn't change the fact that I enjoyed my overall experience with the movie. It's just, like you brought up like the cake analogy. To me, this movie was like being drunk and going to a late night diner and ordering chicken fingers and fries. It is absolutely not going to be the greatest meal you've ever had, but it fills you up. It does the job. And, when you get home, you're like, all right, I'm glad I had those chicken fingers and fries, because otherwise tomorrow I would have been hungover. But at the same time, you're like, I probably would have preferred if I would have gotten something better. But I just went with like the basic thing that I know is going to fill me up. Sure. That's kind of how I felt with this. There's one thing that I wanted to bring up. I see your one joke that lands by Patton Oswalt. Which one was that?
So he goes and he shows them those, like, I don't know, what are they called? Monographs or whatever, those little rolls that like play the music. And he's like, oh, this one has Nancy or Mary Todd Lincoln saying a swear word or dropping an F-bomb. Like, I thought that was funny. Like, I think he just improv that, you know?
That was good. Yes.
And the reason why I put that in here is because I feel like you got fucking Patton Oswalt, you have Kumail Nanjiani, and you have Paul Rudd. Those could be the three Ghostbusters right there. You know what I'm saying? Yes.
I think that one of the problems, and I like Kumail Nanjiani a lot, but I feel like he's one of those actors who he feels like he's that character all the time. And Paul Rudd kind of feels that same way, where, like, I feel like the joke in this movie about Paul Rudd not being able to be an asshole is also a joke about Paul Rudd, the actor, where it's like, I would fucking love to see Paul Rudd do like a dark, like, totally, give me Paul Rudd's Denzel Washington Training Day. Give me Paul Rudd, Adam Sandler in Uncut Gems. Give me that dark, gritty, mean Paul Rudd movie. Because Paul Rudd being like the super cool, nice guy. That's Ant-Man. That is Gary Gruberson. That is, he's a big time actor, but he's great at what he does. But it starts to feel very samey after a while.
I guess you didn't see Halloween 6.
Yes, give me that's right. Paul Rudd needs to come back to horror, and he needs to make the direct sequel to Halloween, The Curse of Michael Myers, a movie that I will passionately defend more than most. Uh,
Do you have Apple? Do you have Apple TV?
yeah.
Dude, check out The Shrink Next Door with him and Will Ferrell. That's the closest Paul Rudd comes to being. I mean, he is a bad guy in that show. He's unlikable. It's a really good show too. It's got
It's
Go ahead. What?
No,
Would you
it's just
watch it?
funny because whenever somebody mentions Apple TV, I forget that I have it, and I
Yeah,
remember something that somebody tweeted where it's like
yeah.
it's where good actors go to make great things that nobody watches.
There you go. I want you to go watch it. The Shrink Next Door. It's got Will Ferrell and Paul Rudd. It's got
Okay,
an asshole Paul Rudd on it. I want to see what you
I
think of
want to
it.
see an asshole Paul Rudd. I want to see Paul Rudd like just grab like a character by like the throat, tell him he's gonna like fucking kill him and like do nasty shit. It's just like I've seen him for it's been think about when he was introduced in the MCU. It's been like a decade of Paul Rudd being a top like actor in Hollywood as like super nice guy Paul Rudd.
Right. Yeah, I mean, he even has more edge on him and stuff in like things like 40-Year-Old Virgin and things like that. But I mean, yeah, I know. I remember Paul Rudd from when we were like kids, and I feel like his jokes just don't really land in this. Like, there's stuff in this that I like that excites me and gets me interested, but it just they never really do what they're supposed to do with it. Like, they have this whole fucking side ghost institute where they're like testing ghosts, and they have like a different containment unit down there. There's these different ghosts that are in the jail because essentially they haven't put them in the main containment unit, and you have this one called Possessor who's jumping around everywhere. He was like really interesting, at least. Then you had this other ghost that was like this big mammoth ghost that would kind of come out of the shadows, and it was very much like an animal at the zoo. I liked that. Then you had this little like puking ghost too, and I liked the idea of that, but it doesn't really go anywhere. That one guy, Lars, at the end, he's walking around the firehouse when Garaka is attacking the firehouse, and you see this little wobbly, pukey ghost come up to him, and he says pretty much the exact same line of dialogue as Nedry in Jurassic Park. He goes, "Oh, I thought you were one of the big ones." And then the thing fucking throws up on him just like a spitter. I was like, "Oh, is this fucking Jurassic Park?" But like, that's it. That's all that where that goes. And then my last point, kind of just getting towards wrapping this up, is that you have this big showdown, this almost like Alamo sequence where it's all these Ghostbusters in the firehouse and Baraka's coming to the firehouse. Now, you mentioned before that there wasn't this sequence showing like the New Yorkers frozen to death and stuff like that. At one point, the containment unit explodes, or at least it ruptures and stuff comes out, and it looks very much like the first movie. But they do show like Manhattan, and it's like frozen over, and it looks like sort of like a day after tomorrow ice age kind of thing. So they show that, but what's so weird about it is then you have like people like standing next to fucking hot dog vendors and stuff, or they're just lying on the street while New York looks like Antarctica, and they're not frozen,
Yeah.
And it's like, is this deadly freeze that makes your blood turn to ice, or is it just like really cold out in New York? Like, which one is it?
When the containment unit busted, I think I audibly went Skybeam.
Right. Yeah. You got enough of those, right? Yeah.
My biggest issue with the movie, and it feels like I've listed a bunch, but in all honesty, my biggest issue with this movie is I thought Garada was a pretty cool looking villain. I thought when they got close up on him, especially with the horns, looked really freaking cool. Got like these Lady Deathstrike claws.
Nice reference. Yeah.
Thank you. I know who I'm talking to.
Yes.
And, but yeah, like to your point, it felt like there were no stakes. Nobody was put in jeopardy to a point where, like you said, like, oh my God, the city is frozen and millions of people are frozen to death. No, they're just standing out in the cold in July. Then there's the issue of like, we need the fire starter or the fire master to, that's actually somebody who died. The poor guy who owns the vape store.
Oh, yeah, they do kill the vape guy. Yes.
Yeah, but like,
they shatter him.
Nadim, he's like, I can't really move the flame to the candle. And then all of a sudden he's like, I have firepower. Boom.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah,
you know, by the time Garada shows up in the firehouse, like from that one scene to the ending is like less than 10 minutes. It's probably like 5 to 6 minutes of screen time.
yep, yep,
And
yep.
all the like the I remember the trailer that we got, the first one is Coney Island freezing, these ice, like sharp ice spikes jutting through. I thought like we'd see like a spike go through like somebody and like freeze them like that, like ugh, like
Yeah.
Sub-Zero in Mortal Kombat, you know?
Yes. Well,
And
I mean, that's the thing, and I think I put this ticker on here before. Was Ray going to die? You know, there was that one part that you mentioned before where Phoebe asked Ray, "Do you ever imagine what it's like to be a ghost?" He says all the time, and I was thinking like Dan Aykroyd is getting up there. We've already had Egon die in this franchise. There's a part where the spikes all pop up when the Legacy Ghostbusters are pulling on that lever to close the containment unit, and I thought that one of the spikes was going to get Ray. And it's weird because it like looks like a spike almost gets him, and then he says something to Winston where he's like, "Golden years." He says something like that, and I thought that was going to be like he got stabbed. He says that.
yeah.
Then when everyone walks away, he's going to be like holding his side.
So
what were we going to say?
not only that, but there's another scene, a great scene with him and Winston, and I fucking love Ernie Hudson, and I love that they've made him like the philanthropist Ghostbuster.
Yeah.
Like the next movie I show Charlotte is going to be the original Crow. So I just love Ernie Hudson, big Ernie Hudson guy. But there's the one scene with him and Ray where he says, "Come on, Ray, these are supposed to be our golden years." And Ray says back to him, "But this is what I love to do."
Right.
Like this is my golden years, sitting in my occult shop, talking about the occult, working with the new younger Ghostbusters. This is what I love to do. So him dying in the movie, and like you could have kept Dan Aykroyd. Let's pretend there's a third movie. You could have kept Dan Aykroyd on payroll as a ghost. And he could have continued to mentor Phoebe and talk to podcasts. Podcast could have been with Ghost Ray.
Ghost? Yes.
I thought that would have been such a cool thing. And it's like, no, everybody's fine. All the Ghostbusters are good. You know, even the originals, I liked Bill Murray showing up, walking over, like popping open the thing to find like the bottle of hooch that he had stashed 40 years ago.
Right.
But like, this is it. They make it a point in this movie. It's been 40 years. And like I feel like they need to like make a clean break and just take the franchise in a different direction. Or, like had Ray died in our like fantasy universe, had Ray died and become a ghost.
Fantasy
and in the next movie, like, you could turn Winston almost into like Charlie from Charlie's Angels, where like he calls at the beginning and he's like, "I got a job for you. There's ghosts out in Vegas." And like, oh, the Ghostbusters are going. Like, it could have been like, I don't know. It just you don't have to have these 70-year-old actors who were awesome 40 years ago donning the jumpsuit and the proton packs in 2024. Like, you don't have to have that. And they did that scene in Afterlife, and I thought that was kind of like, okay, we got that out of our system now. We don't have to have like 10 people. Like we have Lucky, we have Podcast, we have Lars, we have Firemaster. That's 4 new characters plus the family of 4. So there were 11 Ghostbusters fighting Garada at the end.
Yes.
Like,
and he almost takes him out.
Yeah. In part 2, like Lewis Rick Moranis dons the gear in that like
Yeah.
awesome scene at the end where he's like, "I'm a Ghostbuster,"
Right.
and it's
Right.
like that was five. That was like the four Ghostbusters and Lewis. That was
Right.
it.
Right. Right.
So it's too much at this point, you know.
Yeah. And it's funny because it's like you keep kind of talking about a potential sequel, third movie. And I mean, my theater was completely empty except for this one dude. It was me and my friend Jay, and this one dude who laughed very loudly at some of the jokes in this movie. He walks in the theater and he sees us and he's like, "Oh, this is like a ghost town in here." And I feel like that's what the theater was. I've been going to these Thursday night screenings to see a lot of the movies that we talk about, and they've just been like empty. Dune was crowded, but
Dune, I will give
yeah,
Dune credit. But I also saw Dune at like a an advanced screening,
yeah, yeah,
like a Regal like guest screening. So it was a my theater was packed for Dune.
hmm
But aside from that, a lot of the times I go to the movies, I also have the benefit of going at like weird times, whether it's a Thursday night. Like I saw Late Night with the Devil in the smallest theater there, and there were like maybe 10 people total. I saw Immaculate. I think I was in a theater with less than 10 other people.
yeah,
But like, there's been a huge discourse on social media about, how people enjoy movies, and most people don't enjoy the theater anymore. The movie theater for me, and why I love it, it is the only place where I'm guaranteed to watch a movie.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
And like I watched this 80-minute movie the other day. It took me 3 hours. I watched it from 7 o'clock in the morning until about 9:40.
Yeah.
By the time the credits started rolling, and Athena was like, "What's taking you so long to watch this movie?" I was like, "Because every time I get a text message, I pause the movie, and then my phone's in my hand. So then I scroll, and then I'll
Yeah.
send you a message, and then I'll check my email, and then the cats jump in my room, and I'm like, all right, let me go feed the cats, and then Charlotte wakes up, and I go get her breakfast, and this 80-minute movie turns into a 3-hour movie, and I'm like, I didn't like it at 80 minutes. Now I have to sit through it for 3 hours. Whereas I go to the movie theater, I shut my
Yeah.
phone off, and I enjoy the movies.
Right.
And it's one of the few places where I'm guaranteed to just like focus in on a movie. I don't let my ADHD control me while I'm there.
Nice.
But yeah, no, I think that is a topic for another day. The whole issue of like, theaters are just not drawing crowds. Very few, in a post MCU world, there's been very Oppenheimer, Barbie, Dune, at least for the first couple of weeks. Um, you know, uh, Dune 2 is probably winding down its run at this point.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's already almost April, so we're gonna get into more, bigger blockbustery type movies coming up.
Yeah. Yeah. So we'll see where this goes. We'll see where Ghostbusters Frozen Empire lands as far as the budget. Sounds like Danny appreciated it for the most part. He compared it to a meal at a diner, a filling meal so that you don't get a hangover. I would say that it's like you go to that diner and you get that meal, but then it turns out the chicken has a lot of batter on it and maybe the fries are cold too. So it's still filling, but those are our two metaphors.
I give it about a 6.5, 6.5 out of 10, which, if it's a test grade, that's a 65. It passed, but it passed barely.
I like that. I think I could run with it too, but I would be the mean professor that gives it a 60. So close, doesn't make the cut. But with that being said, we got 1 minute left in our hour-long recording. I'm going to do a quick plug. I know Danny has his Late Night with the Devil video that he just posted on there. He's got his horror trivia video that he posted on our channel. Danny is constantly putting videos up on our channel.
That's going to go up probably tomorrow or Tuesday. I have a video about why everyone should play horror trivia. And yeah, my shorts on Immaculate and Late Night with the Devil. You go.
Yes. Anytime you want to eat one of Danny's shorts, go check them out on our YouTube channel. They're on there. And I would say put that up on Tuesday, man, because this video is going to come out on Monday. But Danny and I will be back with some more Argento coming up. And of course, any of the new horror streams. There's Danny's trap. He's about to bust. We'll see you all real
Bustin'
soon.
makes me feel good.